there's lots of different ways to get at politics. There's, class politics, there's city building politics, there's power politics, there's nation building politics. But in my family, it's always been about how you build a neighborhood. And that's where I think the commonality lies between all the different professions that my brothers and sisters have and my relatives have. It's always been engaged at the very local level in building a better neighborhood. And that involves all of the other kinds of politics, from class politics to nation building to the politics that got our family sent to Australia to begin with, which is stealing our horses from the British Army, which is a whole other kind of politics, I guess. But it's always been part of the conversation, and the sense, and I guess this is where entitlement or privilege probably plays a role from a perspective of analysis, is that you've never not had the right to shape the way your community works. In fact, it's a responsibility to stand up and play a role in making sure your community evolves and becomes stronger and better and fairer and more beautiful a place to live. And when you start looking at those things, from architecture to journalism, to you talked about comedy as a political sport. I was a cartoonist before I was anything above all of what I'm known for. It's always been about engaging in making your community a stronger, more beautiful, more affordable place.
Do you still do the cartoons?
Yeah, actually I do.
And do you publish them or share them?
No, it's become a way of not heckling on the floor of council.
Nice. And you mentioned that commitment to the greater good, that commitment of responsibility that comes with that political awareness. I assume that's what drove you into journalism, but I want to frame that in the sense that not at all?
No, what I was making a living as a cartoonist and an illustrator, and living in a warehouse not unlike this, and paying my bills and having a great old time. When I had a really bad eye infection and lost the focus and the visioning in my right eye, so that only my left eye does the work, and that's why I now have to wear glasses. But I couldn't draw for 6-8 months, and I was listening to CKLN radio. Some friends had just, Ralph Ben Murgy and Anton Leo and some others had just started broadcasting CKLN FM 88.1, which is now off the air, but it just started the project. And I would listen to it while I was doing my cartooning, mostly for the music. And with nothing to do for 6 months, and with the Morgentaler trial just about to begin, and with the issue of choice being front and center in a lot of our lives, a lot of the conversations in the city at that time, decided that I might as well go and sit in the courtroom and cover the trial and provide a perspective on it that I thought would extend beyond what the mainstream media was doing, and start talking to the activists and the people who were doing the work to protect the clinic and get women the right to choose. Started interviewing those folks. So I started showing up and watching the trial and interviewing Carolyn Egan and Judy Rebick and Norma Scarborough and all the folks that were on the other side of the prisoner's docket from Dr. Morgentaler, and that's how I got into journalism. It was totally by accident. I was literally an invalid and a little bored and decided to go into a courtroom.
Well, and I think some of us who are younger take for granted how journalism used to go to only traditional sources, and to go and ask the activists, to go and talk to some of those people on the periphery was, I'm sure at the time, not a very common practice. And I could admit that I was never...
Actually,
go ahead.
Let me back it up a little bit. When I was a kid, when my dad was in politics, and before he became a journalist, we were used to sort of the CBC and folks showing up with film cameras and massive amounts of lights to do a 10-second clip. I remember going to City Hall as a little kid and always wondering who was sitting up in that balcony. I always found the journalism process interesting. And if you ask my parents, if you could, about the role that journalists played in the for example, the fight to stop Spadina and the Spadina Expressway in the city, it was critically important to get the journalists on side. But at that point in time, journalists, and I use that to cover broadcast and print and all the other different forms there are now, but at that point, journalists weren't celebrities. They were part of the neighborhood and part of the community. And as a result, they were engaged in the change that was happening in a way that was different than it is today. Nowadays, a lot of the, especially as, what was it, 93% of all media is received through the television in terms of journalism, especially coverage of City Hall. The folks that are on camera, and I've experienced this, become celebrities unto themselves, and actually are less and less engaged in the local community, certainly aren't paid anywhere near the average salary in the city. They're 2.5 times more. They get paid more than politicians do. And as a result, journalists now pretend that they're detached, but are actually more product of their status as celebrities and rather well-paid celebrities. And so journalists now are no longer engaged in the day-to-day life of the struggle, regardless of what issue it is. And it's very rare that you come across a journalist who actually has the institutional memory or the community base that ties them to the story they're covering. And I think that's the change that's happened. It's been an evolution of the profession that's more at play here.